President Trump has re-expressed his desire to take Greenland, this time refusing to rule out the possibility of using military or economic coercion to achieve his goals. It's an idea he's been...
So this is interesting because I remember reviewing some videos about Trump and his interest in Greenland. I actually thought that it was going to be some type of negotiation tactic for him to push some other agenda. So it seems as though he is really actually intent on purchasing Greenland. So I'm interested to see what they're going to cover in this video.
Been pushing since 2019, when he first suggested purchasing the island from Denmark.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time.
It's in the North Atlantic and is considered to be part of the North American Arctic rather than the European Arctic. So if you're Trump, you might reasonably look at a map and say, why isn't this a territory under either direct American control, in other words, a 51st state, or in some kind of closer relationship?
However, the United States isn't the only country with an eye on the region. In 2018, a Chinese state-owned company bid roughly $550 million to expand 2 airports in Greenland. But efforts from the Pentagon...
So this is likely a big reason as to why Trump is interested in it. I think he even previously mentioned the fact that he saw Chinese interest in the area. And I think he might have also mentioned Russia and or China at that point having interest in Greenland and him kind of wanting to kind of beat them to it to some extent. So it is interesting if he's actually going to find some way to move forward with this, but still interested to see what they're going to say more.
Pentagon forced it to back out. Meanwhile, Russia has been reopening old Soviet military bases across the Arctic since 2015, including Nagurskoye, located just 600 miles off the northern coast of Greenland. So how did this island with a population of just 56,000 and an ice sheet covering about 80% of the territory gain such geopolitical significance? And why is President Trump so eager to acquire it? Greenland's location is a major factor behind its rising prominence in global geopolitics. To start, the sea around Greenland is part of what's known as the GI-UK Gap, a strategic transit route located between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. Securing this choke point has been essential in America and NATO's efforts to contain Russia's naval forces and stop a potential threat.
That was a connection or a waterway that would allow the Soviets coming out of their Murmansk bases and naval bases to project naval power into the Atlantic to cut the United States off from its allies in Western Europe during the Cold War. This is still an arena of very active undersea activities. The Russians have been modernizing and continue to put at the forefront of all of their defense dollars, and at least in their Navy, in their nuclear submarine and undersea capabilities. Now the potential of adding in the Chinese Navy is not something to be forgotten.
As China and Russia expand their influence in the Arctic, Greenland's location has also become vital to America's ballistic missile warning system.
When we were locked in a Cold War with the Soviet Union, the bases in Greenland, which were radar as well as air bases, Thule being the most notable, allowed us to have early warning of a Soviet missile launch or bomber attack against the United States.
Yeah, so this is definitely an interesting aspect of why Greenland is a interesting strategic location. So I think somewhat similar to probably how Hawaii functions for the US, it's a location that we have a good amount of control over, and we can use it as sort of an early detection point for anything that could be on its way to the mainland area. And so that makes sense that Greenland is also somewhat similar in that category, where it is a little bit closer towards Europe, especially towards Russia and their activities. And so this could be vital time for anything that does occur in America from Russia or from other locations in Europe or beyond for some type of intervention. And this could be even seconds or minutes could make or break the difference in one of these events. And so geographically, it does make sense to me why he would be interested in it. I haven't really heard too many scenarios of buying countries out. Or obviously we haven't had a new state in a while in America. So curious as to why he thought this was appropriate as opposed to maybe just having more military bases. Like all of these seem to be on the left side here. If we had more on like the right side or kind of continuing to go along the outer perimeter of Greenland, wouldn't that have been enough? I'm not entirely sure what he's hoping for there. Maybe it's also to combat Chinese presence there and or Russian presence there. So it's not just us having access, it's preventing others from having access, because the same thing could be said for Russia in the opposite direction, or China, which is if they had more detection devices in Greenland, then they could see if US is up to anything going towards themselves. And so it is not just an interesting point for the US, it's obviously interesting for anyone on the opposite end as well.
United States.
Today, thanks to a 1951 defense treaty with Denmark, the US still operates one military base in northern Greenland, renamed Bidufik Space Base from Thule Air Base.
Now, in the recent past, with China's rise and it tripling the size of its ICBM ballistic missile arsenal, once again, Greenland plays a national defense role because of its geography. And that base is extremely important to the defense of the United States and, quite frankly, of North America, to include Canada.
Greenland's location also poses a unique economic opportunity thanks to its proximity to Arctic shipping routes. Shipping over Arctic routes saw a 37% increase between 2013 and 2023.
As the Arctic ice flow has changed in the recent past and is projected to continue changing, opening up Arctic shipping routes, you have several lucrative potentials there. For Greenland's role in geography, it's the Northwest Passage that would connect the Pacific all the way over into the North Atlantic. Of course, there's an alternative, which the Chinese and the Russians have been using, the Northern Sea Route. And that's basically the same places on either ends, but just goes along Russia's coastline.
In 2018, China also announced its intention to construct a polar Silk Road, linking China and Europe through the Arctic Ocean.
All in all, Greenland is almost, if you like, a kind of ground zero for how the Arctic has become more and more geopolitically and strategically significant.
So it's interesting. I haven't heard too much about the Arctic. It does seem to make sense that as technology advances, as trade in the global arena increase, people want to have as many advantages as they can. And going back to the technology piece, it also probably likely enables more and more usage of various areas of the globe that were previously underutilized. Obviously, the Arctic is not particularly a friendly environment for human beings, so it's probably not something most folks would want to be involved in or be going there on a regular basis. But as technology advances, it probably makes it easier and easier to traverse that area in a comfortable manner, making this possible. So maybe they'll expand on that a little bit more, but it is curious that this is becoming a big topic at this point in time.
Greenland is also home to a massive deposit of valuable natural resources,
particularly in the central and...
Oh, that's very interesting, actually. Natural resources are obviously a huge asset to any country. So having all these varieties of... Right here, they mostly have metals in this list here. So I'm not sure if there's any other natural resources here as well, such as like oil or something else. But even some of these, obviously, gold and other substances are used for a variety of purposes in technology, in recreational purposes, etc. And so having more access to rare minerals is going to be valuable for anybody.
Southern parts of the island, there is considerable potential in things like uranium, iron ore, cobalt, zinc, lithium, even precious stones like rubies, for example. And the key area of interest is these critical minerals that are sometimes called rare earths that are used particularly in things like electric cars, wind turbines, the very thing that makes the electrification, if you like, of the economy possible.
Of the 34 minerals considered critical raw materials by the European Commission, 25 are found in Greenland. The country is estimated to have 1.5 million tons of rare earth reserves, compared to 1.8 million tons in the United States.
Wow, that's actually so much. That would, if this were to actually happen, this makes sense why Trump is particularly interested beyond just having military bases. If the US could basically double their rare earth reserves with this one purchase, then that's obviously very, very valuable. So I'm definitely being convinced that Trump is very serious about Greenland and that he's really going to go out of his way to make this a reality.
The other thing that organizations like NATO have drawn attention to, that if you look, for example, in the composition of modern weapon systems, it is absolutely staggering how many minerals are integral to things like tanks, missiles, ships, and the like. And most of those minerals would be considered to be either at high risk or extreme risk in terms of security of supply. And in terms of rare earths, China is absolutely a dominant player.
China has the largest reserve of rare earth elements, accounting for about 60% of the world's production. In recent years, China has banned certain rare earth exports and technology to foreign countries.
Wow, having 60% of the entire Earth's rare mineral exports is crazy. Obviously, that's a huge amount of reserves. It does make sense why US would also want China not to be able to gain access to these. And if China is actually limiting US access to these minerals, it does make sense that this might be actually maybe the key reason why Trump is trying to go after this, or at least one of the top few, as is highlighted by CNBC here.
Chinese have invested significant amount of money to control the uranium assets that are there in Greenland. But having that control, even if they can't pull the minerals out, their ability to control the activities at these mines allows them to have a control over a market space.
Mining companies around the world have operations in Greenland, including the New York-based Critical Metals Corp, a publicly traded company, and Cobalt Metals, a privately owned exploration firm backed by big names like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates.
In essence, when Donald Trump talks about Greenland, one of the things he is interested in is how can the United States and other friendly nations ensure that Greenland's mineral potential, if exploited further, is exploited for our benefit. Or he is also preoccupied with stopping China develop a foothold in Greenland and then dominating Greenlandic resources and then creating a further stranglehold on rare earth supplies globally.
I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Do you guys think it's a good idea for the US to purchase Greenland? Do you think they should be staying out of that? What are your thoughts? I'd like to hear them in the comments below.
I think it's important for us to say that Greenland is not for sale, never has been for sale, never will be for sale.
I think a very unlikely possibility is Greenland becoming a 51st state of the United States, or Greenland joining Alaska and becoming an even larger 50th state. I think that's not likely to come to pass.
In January 2025, Greenland's prime minister said he wanted to strengthen defense and mining ties with the US, but made it clear it would be on Greenland's terms.
There appears to be a growing demand in Greenland of becoming an independent nation state and no longer part of the Danish kingdom.
And if the Greenlanders vote for independence, the very next question is, what will their relationship be with the world, specifically the United States?
Greenland's economy heavily depends on the roughly $511 million worth of annual block grant from Denmark, which accounts for about 20% of Greenland's GDP and more than half of the country's public budget.
Wow, that's a huge portion of it. I believe in a previous video, they actually highlighted the fact that one thing that could actually make this simpler for Trump potentially trying to acquire Greenland in some fashion is that currently there would have to be a deal made between Greenland, the US, and Denmark for it to be possible. But if they gain independence, then Trump just needs to interact with Greenland and figure out how he's going to have whatever control or whatever involvement he thinks he wants to have there. And so he has less parties to deal with at that point in time. So I'm definitely curious to see if that actually transpires and how that changes the conversation between Trump and Greenland at that point.
So whatever happens, an independent Greenland will have to think hard about where that kind of money comes from in one form or another. So the options might include, one is an independent Greenland seeks a free association with the United States.
The Compact of Free Association, which the United States has had since 1986, these compacts allow a local autonomy, but with defense and national security obligations, but also assurances by both to the United States at the same time.
The European Union could also intervene.
The European Union might say to Greenland, can we possibly get you to rejoin the European Union, possibly remaining as a member of the Kingdom of Denmark, but then we will throw additional resource towards you in order to ensure a kind of maximum autonomy, but still remain within the Kingdom of Denmark.
Ultimately, experts question whether acquiring Greenland is truly in the best interest of the United States.
In part, the history of the United States is a history of territorial acquisition and purchasing. And I can well imagine if Trump is seeking to seal his place within US history, then the Greenland purchase, if I can put it like that, would be considered a coup of some proportion.
Is it really an imperative that the United States possess Greenland? I would say that's not as clear nor necessary from my calculation. For one, the driving concern here is a national security one. And as long as the base in Thule is allowed to operate and not be encroached by hostile presence, the Chinese economic presence is one that does cause concern from an intelligence and even a military operational perspective. As long as those minimum standards are not crossed.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think I mentioned this earlier. It's not clear if it is actually necessary. This is where in the past I actually assumed Trump was just doing this for negotiation purposes to kind of maybe get more military base or maybe dampen Chinese or Russian involvement in Greenland and to have Greenland kind of cooperate with that. And that this ploy to purchase Greenland was just some type of firm-fisted negotiation tactic. But again, the fact that it keeps coming up is really making me reconsider this. And it's curious where this will be going next. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Greenland themselves choose to do and their involvement with Denmark and the European Union, because I think that's really going to set the tone and set a direction for possibilities in the coming months, as this topic, I think, is likely to resurface again for a variety of times, likely in Trump's presidency.
I think the United States' number one concern is addressed.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit like or subscribe. I'll see you around.